Hi, Paul. How are you?
Hi, Rob. Good, good.
Great. So we're here talking about the Protect Your Store campaign, where it's got to at this point, a year on. Now it's being enforced. Now it's past royal assent. So talk to me about the licensing scheme that's planned and how this is going to impact retailers.
So I think first we should just have a recap on what great work that many retailers up and down the country got behind and supported the Protect Your Store campaign. There was a lot of work every retailer got behind. There was a lot of letters sent in. I think government chose, Jonathan Reynolds and Peter Kyle chose to ignore the sacks of letters that we sent in, which today I'm still pretty angry about, because independent convenience stores provide a service to the local communities, and the government failed to recognise that. Let's move on. The royal assent has happened. The bill's been passed, even though they didn't want to listen to livelihoods and what impact this bill is going to cause with abuse in stores. So we're now in the scheme of a consultation of how this is going to work, and I think we, as retailers, we need more knowledge from government. I think government are still being pretty grey on this and not sharing documentation with retailers, and I think it's confusing. And when they're having the next consultation on the Tobacco and Vapes Act, I personally believe retailers of all sizes should be in that room, because it affects everybody. And I don't believe that government truly understand what they're doing. I don't think they've never worked in a supermarket or a convenience store, so they wouldn't know what happens on a ground level. It's going to be a burden if they don't listen. That's my view where it is at the moment.
So it's the abuse levels that are going to go up because of this, and retailers are kind of being left with the government policy to defend it on their own without the proper support.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the government's bet on this is they don't want tobacco getting into children's hands, right? Now, it's not going to be done right, okay? But if it's done right, these powers can help the local economy thrive. It could protect our staff. It could prevent children from accessing cigarettes and vapes through these irresponsible retailers that the government have allowed to pop up on every street corner and every postcode all over the UK, England, Scotland, and Wales. I blame the government for that, because they've allowed this to happen. Now, you've seen the news of what's gone on, and you've seen in the news that these shops that have been allowed to open, they get closed down for a day and they're allowed to open up the next day. They're not just selling illicit cigarettes. They're not just selling illicit vapes. They're not just selling single cigarettes to children at 50 pence. The BBC, ITV, the world has reported that this is a front for organised crime. There's scenes of drugs being sold, gas canisters. Is that the world that Keir Starmer and his little boys club want us to live in? He's let this happen. He's the Prime Minister. I said it before and I'll say it again. Him and his little boys club, I'll use that term because it is a boys club, need to stand down, because they've failed the UK.
Well, you don't have to go far to see it, do you? You go to Coventry, Manchester, Birmingham. We know retailers up and down the country that in Manchester there are whole areas that are just these illicit shops that, like you say, it's the enforcement. They get closed down within a week, within a month. Someone else has opened up, and they just kind of curtail the rules so they can carry on doing what they're doing.
And Rob, we was the first ones to get behind this campaign, right? Us at C-Talk, we put a lot of effort into this campaign. We rallied up retailers. Retailers supported us on this campaign, and we brought it to the limelight. BBC and so forth only followed us afterwards. Yeah, we was the ones that went out there. We the ones actively were probably the activists behind this campaign, because it affected many businesses and many retailers' livelihoods up and down the country. Now, competition is one thing. This isn't competition. This is what the government's allowed to happen on our street corners. In the office that I'm sitting in right now, there's a shop opposite me. And, it's mad what happens. I took a team out last week from a different soft drinks company, just on some store visits. And we went to one store not so far from here. And if I told you that there were school children in uniform buying alcohol in that store. This was at 4 p.m. on a Wednesday afternoon. They were buying single cigarettes in there. They were buying vapes in there. Not only that, the stench that come from that shop only indicated one thing of what they're selling. And you can't tell me that the police, local trading standards, local MPs in Coventry don't know that's happening. Now, if that's happening on my doorstep, it's happening on every other retailer's doorstep and every other family's doorstep in the UK.
It's worrying, isn't it? Do you think the penalties, we've talked about enforcement, is it the fact that it's not just bad enforcement? There doesn't seem to be much of a punishment for, the penalties that the government are handing out. Maybe it's because the problem's so big. There are so many of these shops. They can't really issue a good enough penalty to keep them to counter them from doing this in the first place.
Well, I don't think the penalty's there, is it, Rob? When you look at stores, if they're selling £3,000, £4,000 worth of illicit tobacco a week, no penalty in monetary terms is going to worry them because they're making plenty of money on that. Now, I would say, as a retailer, speaking on my behalf, I'd ask the government to introduce a £5,000 minimum first-time penalty for being caught selling illicit nicotine products or selling nicotine products to minors. I also ask that subsequent offences result in suspension of their licence. That could be their alcohol licence as well. Furthermore, if these retailers are caught selling tobacco and nicotine products without a licence, I'd ask the store to be immediately closed permanently. Is it sufficient that selling tobacco and nicotine products to children has a maximum penalty of only £2,500, despite the youth vaping crisis we have on our hands? The government need to understand, and it's time for sensible solutions that will protect convenience retailers, children and local communities, and mums and dads that are worried about the situation in their communities. And that's the bit the government aren't realising.
So, given that where we're at with the campaign now, if you've got one final message to Peter Kyle, to retailers about about where we're at now, any other additional comments on this?
I think government need to rally up retailers, big and small, to talk about the licensing scheme, which is happening now. And while they're building whatever scheme they believe is correct, then get the people that run stores around a table and ask them what needs to be done. It's not just the retailers, it's ACS, it's the SGF, it's the FWD. These are the people that protect convenience stores as well. That's our lobbying groups, but they should also be backed by retailers as well. There's an argument to say that the BRC should be there because the supermarkets are there as well. So we all should be in that one room while people in Westminster who don't get out of the office understand what's going on. That's one. Enforcement, trading standards in local areas, local police need to meet regular with local stores. Set up a steering committee, get intel from retailers of what's going on and how enforcement could be better enforced in their local areas. Today, you can't get through to any council, any trading standards, any police with these issues, right? Okay, no. And that's a big problem. So that needs to be addressed. And then penalties, they need to be greater. They need to be to the point where it hurts these pop-up shops that they won't do it again. And then finally, the last message, Peter Kyle, just read a letter and understand what's going on in your local communities. Give local communities more support. You said you're giving more spending power to local councils. We haven't seen them. Local police act on this information. You don't. You're quick enough coming in and asking for CCTV when there's a problem in the area. When we report this crime, you're non-visible. If HMRC, local police, local councils, local MPs, big MPs, were to consult together and take information from retailers, whether it might be a local community store, a Sainsbury's, a wholesaler, take that intel back because that is so valuable to you. But if you don't do this, the second part of what you're going to do is going to fail, because I'll tell you why it's going to fail. The abuse factor that will happen to our store colleagues in our stores up and down the country is going to be unbearable. And does the government of today want to see local convenience stores that provide for their local communities disappear? It's about all us retailers up and down the country and wholesalers coming together and going to government as one. So if you haven't already, head over to our website, Protect Your Store, and get involved, please. I urge you for your support.
Great. Thank you, Paul.